Please just breathe.
But yes, I'm gonna steer us back in the direction of musical conversation really quick.
Let's do it.
So, just to kind of give you an idea of the frame of my mindset where this question comes from, and my hope is that aspiring artists or people who are thinking about learning to create music are having some of these same thoughts, and that they kind of understand where this question is coming from. I've got kind of two different, I'll call them experiments, two different ideas that I want to experiment when it comes to sound. And I think that you would agree that, especially on the electronic music side, learning a new DAW, learning a new software that helps you make music can be especially frustrating, especially if you aren't, paying for a course and you're trying to learn it on your own. You're trying to do it the organic way. And yes, YouTube offers a lot of help, but I think we have a huge instant gratification mindset, right? Where, we know what we want. We just want to know how to make it, and we want it right now. Like we don't want to go through the 90 to 100 hours of experience that it's going to take messing around and learning how to make the beats and the bass line. We just want, to sit down, have a 2-hour studio session, boom, number one hit. For example, right now I'm working on, and I'm not going to, say specifically that this is what I'm working on, but one of the musical pieces that I'm working on, I am looking for a old-timey piano sound that is similar to that is used in the intro for Sick Boy by the Chainsmokers. That old crunchy, older piano sound, and something that I have been struggling with is, how do I find the right software instrument? Is there anything that's free out there? Am I going to have to spend money to get this done? And I find myself over the last week spending about an hour of time and then getting frustrated and walking away from it. And the question that I have that boils down for you is, I'm sure that you've had similar experiences, be it on the more acoustic side or the electronic side. I'm sure they've happened on both sides. When you have an idea in your head and you know what you want it to sound like, but you can't get there, what motivates you to stay on that path? And what are some strategies that you've used to, I guess, keep pushing you to learn when it seems too difficult to continue, when you feel like giving up and you feel like saying, fuck it, this is too hard?
I think this is a multi-part answer, because in regards to sound chasing specifically, I have stopped doing that almost entirely because my best works have always come from accidents and just moving forward with whatever ended up kind of happening based on educated guesses. So that's, I guess, the second. I kind of did this out of order. The first part is you have to learn your tools. You just have to learn your tools. When you're struggling with music production and you're like, oh, I don't want to put in that time to learn how to do something. As frustrating as it is, there is going to be a day where you're going to have to play a saw wave and play around with an EQ and figure out what each little band sounds like. There's going to be a day you do that. It could be years after you first open your DAW, but there's going to be some day where you're going, this EQ is frustrating me. I need to know how it feels. I need to know what it does. I need to kind of know a little bit more about what it's doing. Same is true for basically any effect that you're working with, any software instrument you're working with. The DAW in general, for example, audio stretching, I had to learn kind of all sorts of, for Ableton in particular, they're called warp modes. I had to learn what each warp mode did because they became something that I critically needed to use in order to progress. And so I just kind of was let's take this drum loop and we're going to mess around with it for 3 hours. I didn't create anything usable during that time, but I created a lot of knowledge that was integral for the last 7 or 8 releases that I've done. In fact, I think pretty much going forward, all my bass design requires knowledge of resampling and the warp modes in Ableton. And so kind of circling back to the second part is that I no longer chase a sound that I want to go after, but instead I know my tools well enough to be okay, so this old-timey Chainsmokers type sound is what I'm kind of thinking about. So instead of going, I want that sound, I want to create that sound and obsessing over it, I instead go, okay, so what are the main most important elements of that? Well, I like the let's say I don't know the song, honestly. I'm not, that's probably bad, but I don't know it. So
Didn't
I
expect you
should
to. It's
probably know the
okay.
Chainsmokers song.
Chainsmokers get a lot of hate,
But
so
they do. I think it's a little unfounded. They're really fantastic pop music writers. But so like I'm assuming because it's the Chainsmokers and they are mildly predictable. Sorry, they probably have like a natural minor kind of melodic like basically like triad over triad like beginning piano structure. You're pulling it up right now, aren't you?
I was gonna say I'm gonna expose myself really quick because I definitely have the chords that I was like basically punching the same chords in to Ableton with
You
a
figured
MIDI
it out.
pack that I had, and I
Sure.
was getting frustrated, so I just had it minimized. But I've got like 6 tabs on this Chrome window that I have open right now.
Yeah, totally.
It looks
But yeah,
like
so any. Oh yeah, go ahead.
it is like the first. I guess the first verse is literally all D minor, A minor.
Great. So 2 chords, even better. So I have this idea that I'm going for, and the most important element is the first most important element is like the tonal structure, like the chordal elements, like the physical like harmonic structure. Okay, so we figured out it's D minor, A minor. Second thing is what's like that vibe of that old timey piano? Is it because there's like mild phasing happening, like a chorusing effect because it sounds a little bit out of tune? Is it that it sounds kind of underwater, like there's not a lot of high frequencies? Like what is it about that sound that I like about it? And instead of being like, okay, I'm going to work on making it sound exactly the same, I'm going to just be like, what are the broad strokes that are going to be like important to this? And during that process, if I make a mistake and I like it better, so like for example, maybe I'm like part of that old timiness is like, oh, it sounds a little bit like there's some tape saturation in there. It sounds kind of gritty. I add some tape saturation. Oh, that's definitely not it, but it sounds cool. And like you just kind of keep going from there, right? And now suddenly like you've kind of added like your own flavor, which actually ended up just being an educated guess. And I think that's kind of the most important thing for music production for me in general, is like there's definitely some merit to like copycatting in the beginning and like trying to figure out how stuff is built. But ultimately, where you really start to find your stride is when you know your tools well enough to make educated guesses about how you want the sound to come out, but you don't get tripped up if it's completely different than you anticipated. And in fact, you use that as an inspiration point to move forward.
Okay. Honestly, I was expecting a completely different answer. I was gonna, say something like, "Oh, there's this really cool website that you just go and you punch it into, and it gives you the VST that you want or whatever it is." But no, that's so. It sounds like from a composition perspective, you really unpack it and look into not only the music theory of the sound that you're trying to create, but on a broader spectrum, what can you do rather than copying that sound? What can you do to get kind of close and not necessarily hope that a happy accident happens, but as they generally do, you throw something on there. Oh God, that's not what I was envisioning, but it
might
might work.
Yeah. Well, and I think another critical thing about this all is it's really down to your production style. You mentioned VSTs. I basically work in exclusively audio now. So when I'm using VSTs, I'm using them for the simple act of sonic creation, or like literally just like I need it for like say I'm making like a chord intro or something like that. I'll do that. I'll like play it. I barely ever play, but I'll like type it in, right? I'll like include it in. Like let's say it's really simple. It's just like da 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 da, and like okay, cool. This is something that I want. But to me, that's pretty boring. And I don't want to do a bunch of automations and a bunch of like stuff. It just bugs me to the point where I think what really happened was there was a period of time where I realized that I was able to make more interesting edits by like there's this concept of printing stuff to audio, rendering or like pre-rendering or resampling or whatever, which is basically you're creating something and you may do a couple of automations, like maybe let's say I do like 2 or 3, but I don't want to have like 16 automations on something. So what instead I do, it's actually, oh my gosh, the concept is called destructive workflows. So what you do is you have that VST and maybe like 2 or 3 automations that were just like the quickest ones, like a little filter automation and maybe like, I don't know, like let's say it's serum. I'm going to do like a warp bend modulation on the wavetable or something like that. Just whatever was the first thing that kind of like came to mind as the knob I wanted to twist. Again, kind of happy accident. Like I'm not like paying attention. I'm just like doing something. And it's like, that works, that doesn't. Just kind of move forward. What I'll do after that is, because I don't want to have like a bunch of automation lanes that I'll have a bunch of different stuff doing. Not that that's a wrong way to produce, but for me personally, I realized that what was kind of fun for me was to, okay, take that. And there's this really awesome feature in Ableton called flatten and merge, or freeze and flatten, I think is what it's called. And so you freeze that track, and then you flatten it, and it just renders that whole track to audio. So now I don't have access to the MIDI notes at all. Like it's no longer a MIDI track, it's an audio track. And it's just got that little like thing. And I go, okay, well, this is kind of cool. Like let's stretch this note and compress this note and like have this one repeat a bunch of times. And I'm just like, playing with audio as I would like with a tape machine, like literal tape, like you're cutting and, duplicating and stuff like that. And I think that for me afforded a style of production that the word I'm looking for is artifacts. When you have the ability to go back in and change every MIDI note and make everything perfect, it's really cool because you can create these really articulate sounding pieces of music. But something that I ended up being really excited about was having those imperfections kind of shine through. Like that when you're doing something incorrectly, when you're like stretching a note farther than it should sound, when you're adding a reverse reverb on something and then rendering it and then reversing that reverb and then cutting up that reverb tail and stuff like that, stuff that you cannot do with VST, stuff that you cannot do with automation. That was when I was getting my most interesting sounds. So yeah, I don't know why I started talking about this, but basically just like I don't work in MIDI that often anymore. I guess it's kind of something that I know a lot of producers who do. A lot of producers do it for that very reason. They say like, I want to be able to change the note and have it be perfect sounding. And I'm like, dude, all for you. I'm too lazy for that now. I render out my stuff because it's less work in the long run.
Definitely.
So
Definitely. Wow. I do have kind of like a list of questions that I'm kind of going on, but you're spitting a lot of knowledge on me that is just kind of stunning me at the moment. So I have to take like a couple of seconds to mentally unpack that everything that is just being said. And I hope that our viewers, regardless of if they are interested in making music or not, take a second and go back again to listen to what was just said, because it was just a lot. And I think to kind of understand the process, there's a certain appreciation, I think, that comes from listening to music and understanding, oh my God, that had to have been a nightmare. Or, oh my God, like, was that supposed to be there? Like, was that a happy accident?
Well, and I guess that goes back to what I was saying about knowing your tools. If you know your tools and you know what everything does, then you'll never get stuck in the same ways that you would get stuck before. You'll get stuck in new, more frustrating ways, like creatively blocked.
Sure.
But like for trying to come up with something that like you have this vision and you want to enact it, you won't get stuck in that way anymore, because it's not about that. Like you'll have what's a good example? It's kind of like when you like go to walk for, or that's a better example. I guess it's like learning a language. Like when you know how to speak a language, you do so without thinking about it. And sometimes you get stuck a little bit like, is this the right way I want to say something? But you're able to kind of push past through it. And then you might go back on your words and be like, you know what, actually, I think that what I just said was not entirely descriptive of what I was trying to say. And that's kind of that editing process, right? But like ultimately, you don't have to look up every word in the dictionary every time.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of like the critical point. And the really frustrating answer is like, you have to learn your tools. It takes a lot of time. Do it only when it's fun, I guess is the best way to say it. Like you have to want to do it more than you want to do other things. And if you want to do other things more, then like you should probably do the other things. Like don't force yourself to do it just because you like think you want to. Like you'll know. Like I couldn't put DAWs down. They were unendingly frustrating, but they were what I wanted to do. And now they are unendingly frustrating in many other ways that sure that I will push through and then have more problems in the future. So
This is more of a funny question than a serious question, but did you love Dawes more than Halo?
oh yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I've actually, unfortunately, I'm looking back on Halo with a sort of, we've been so I'm in the process of moving, and I've had the opportunity for the first time in a long time to kind of like relax because I took some time off of work to, settle into a new city and kind of figure out a new thing. And so I was playing some Halo because it's been around, and um, I really love the storylines. I still love the storylines, but I was thinking about how uh, like really destructive first-person shooters are. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, like I totally see where my mom was coming from now. Like I still understand how there's like a cultural framework, and I get like video games are really cool, but I think for me, unfortunately, from now on, Halo is going to be kind of more of an appreciation of a storyline and a lot less of an enjoyment of the game.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Definitely. Definitely.
It
Definitely.
definitely shaped me. And I will say that the most important thing about Halo for me in regards to my artistic development was just watching how meticulously the score was built, watching how meticulously the art direction was. Like that world was beautiful, and the story was impeccable. At the very least, through four, I haven't really had the time to analyze five, and I don't really know where it's gone past. But I think that like one of my favorite comments I ever read on Reddit about Halo was that sometimes the beautiful thing about Halo is that sometimes I wish everything would just go away and I could just wander the open world. And I think that that is above all the most important things. That the art direction was more important than the ethos of war. The art direction was like the thing that was front and center. And I think a lot of gamers felt that when they were playing Halo. So
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. It's funny that we ended up on that Halo topic because, fun fact, Halo to this day is the only song that I have still memorized on my cello. The
like the
fingering, I mean,
OST.
literally front to back. I mean, all
Mm-hmm.
3 pages of it, from the intro into what most people consider to be the Halo theme with the.
Sure.
Anyway,
No,
it's
and that's
just
what I
fun.
was saying, right? Is that it was like Halo wasn't independent of my musical journey because it informed massively my interest in orchestral music. Because that was such an integral part of the story was the surrounding orchestra, the surrounding art direction, visually and auditorily, and like the sound design, everything. It was gorgeous, and it was epic, and it was tragic, and it was all of these emotions that I think are really important for a human to feel. So I don't want to go back on that, but I think what was more frustrating was like I played some online, and people were just like being really rude, and it was like, haha, you're dead, and it was really callous. And like I get it, like I totally understand there's like a culture that gets defined by that, but then I was kind of like, man, if you really like take into perspective like all like the evil that's going on in the world right now, it's just like, man, the part about this that is beautiful is like the story, but there's some aspect of callousness that I don't think I'll be able to appreciate anymore. But it is what it is. I'm
Definitely.
glad that it played such a large part in my life, to be honest.
Yeah. You said online, and the only thing I could think of was a 13-year-old using a racial slur.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That's what we experienced.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Don't miss that. Do not
don't miss
miss
that.
that. So we've talked about not giving up, and we've talked about kind of almost unintentionally a little bit of sound design and composition, in a way, and going into some of those happy accidents and stuff like that. And I want to kind of take a second to transition out of that and talk post production. You've made your song, you're ready to upload it, it goes up on the internet. Cool. There are 0 views. Nobody's looking at it, and obviously there are 2 natural paths, right? You either start going into random forums and just start dropping your SoundCloud link and hope somebody picks it up, or you start asking your friends to take a look at some of your music and hope that they share it on your behalf. And I think that there are pros and cons to each
Yeah.
option. Obviously, the more scary one being sharing the work with your friends because you don't want to feel judged and because you
Yeah.
care about what those people think, that there is a certain, I guess that there is a certain price to be paid, in electing to share that music with people that you care about. And so I guess the question is, one, how did you decide what and when to share? And two, for an aspiring artist, when they're ready to share, what are some of your biggest tips for getting exposure?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm still working on. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. The way the industry works is largely stuff that is. There are like curators behind the scenes. It's not really a secret. It's kind of one of those things that if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's like this illusion of the meritocracy regarding like streaming, like that you can upload something and it has just as much ability to be featured as anyone else. But the reality of the situation is that editorial playlists and individual playlisters and where stuff gets on, like movies and TV and stuff like that, there is infrastructure behind all of that, and it is effectively like a who do you know and how much power do they have. That being said, the most important thing, and it will always win, is your music good? If your music is good and you don't just not tell anyone about it ever, then it will be heard. That it's as simple as that. It'll be heard by people who will love it. It'll be heard by people who will criticize it. It'll grow at a rate that maybe it deserves more, maybe it deserves like not as much or whatever. But like if your music's good, I don't know why I said that about the not as much. It will deserve more almost always, but it will grow. Um, the most important thing is persistence. The second most important thing is the knowledge. Like, what is persistence and what is spam? You know, because you're talking about people here. Regardless of what they have power, regardless of what their intentions are, whatever, you're talking about people. And the reality of the situation, I'm sure you know this, you've done a lot of business stuff. Like, if you come at someone and you're just like selling them something over and over and over again, they
Mm-hmm.
just don't care. They don't care. They're just they're gonna trash the email. They're gonna stop responding to you. If you're face to face, they're gonna just kind of get like cold and be like, "Yep, whatever, dude." Like, you will only get someone's attention if you're actually genuine. And so the first step to that is having good music that you care a lot about. And the second step is sharing it with people that you're genuinely excited about sharing it with. Um, and that could be strangers, but just don't do it in the here's my SoundCloud bro way. Like, get to know a person. Like, is this something they'd be interested in? Like, why do they care? Like, why would they care? And if you think they do, then why would you hold it back? Like, you shouldn't feel like ashamed about what you're sharing. You shouldn't be ashamed about submitting to blogs. You shouldn't be ashamed about submitting to like YouTube channels or like however you're choosing to promote your music. But like, there is an important aspect of recognizing like when you're being obnoxious, and most of the time these connections happen just naturally. They're slow, they're obnoxious, but like as long as you're being a genuine person, like it will just happen so much better. For example, I make lo-fi occasionally. This is just like a thing that I do to kind of ease my brain. I didn't really mean to. It kind of started as a joke with my brother, and one of my coworkers had a playlist that didn't have like a ton of following for lo-fi, but like it was, I think it was like 500 people or something like that. At that point, he'd been nurturing it for about a year, and he had just told his friends about it. Like, oh yeah, come follow this lo-fi playlist. Come follow this. Like, I think you'd enjoy this. Um, and now that playlist has, I think, over 10,000 monthly listeners. And I happen to have also 10,000 plus monthly listeners on that lo-fi um, like playlist because like I knew Jamie, and Jamie really liked my music, and he liked it enough to put it in there. And I also followed the playlist, and I enjoyed the playlist. And like, it's none of it was really creepy and submission-y because it was just like I knew a person. I really liked the music, or I liked what they were making, what they were curating. So I started following it. One time I made something for it as kind of a joke. I sent it to him. He really enjoyed it. He added it. I made feature stuff. I decided to send it to him. He just kind of kept adding it. It's like one of those things that it's just what happens, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
if you're if you are excited about what you're making and you're excited about what other people are doing, like in a curation process, that will show. And if you're really just like looking for anything with numbers and trying to shove your stuff on it and just being like, my music deserves listenership, like you should check this out, like no one says that, but like that's what you're thinking, it will come across in your email, it will come across in your text, it will come across in your correspondence. Like,
Sure.
I know that's really, really fluffy advice, but it's no real actionable steps. But like that's the best advice I can give. It's just because I got my first break, my first like people paying attention to what I was listening to, randomly, or not randomly. I guess that's exactly the opposite of the point. I got it through years of making connections with artists. I had a friend who I made a friend because he walked into my job and we started talking about music production. He seemed cool. His roommate happened to be working with another artist that I was really like at the time enthralled with. I had no idea they were even connected, but it was. He was working with this label slash promotional company in New Zealand, and he said like, I really liked this song that I saw you were working on, like, because we were talking about our own WIPs and stuff like that. And he's like, yo, is it cool if I send this to my curator? Like, I think this is really good. And he did. And now people know me because of that. And like, obviously it was just like a one-time thing. I haven't really done anything since with them. Or I guess I did one other release post that. But like, now that's something to like add on to like my credibility and my knowledge and my connections with when I need like, oh, I don't think this would necessarily fit your playlist, but it might fit yours or your channel or whatever. And I can be like, hey, like I just came across your channel. I really enjoy your content. I actually just subscribed. I've been following you for a little while. Like, I was wondering if you'd be interested in potentially hosting this song or promoting this song or whatever. And that's just it. I feel like I'm spinning around in circles, but hopefully this is helpful at some level. But yeah, it's just like, you will credibly build connections if you are not over promoting, but you will never build connections if you never promote.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. What kind of what I'm getting from this is it's less about selling your songs, and really even less about selling yourself, and more about the genuine intentions and the organicness, I guess, that comes with not only being a person and meeting people, but just sharing similar interests. And you never know when that next door is going to open. Absolutely. And sometimes it's right there in front of your face, and you haven't quite gotten there yet.
Yeah. So for example, that person that came into my job, so I had never had any prior contact with this person. He came into my job and we just started chatting about music production. Then he left and I didn't see him or anyone for like 6 months, but I ended up following him on Instagram. And then just like one day I was like, yo, like we should hang out. We hung out, like I met his roommate, you know what I mean? It's just like one of those things where it's like, I never once told him, oh, like I make music, here it is. It was more like, I love music production. This is something I'm really interested in. What about you? Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, like this is cool. Like, here's my number. Like we'll talk about music production. And then we never did. And I never sent him my music. I never like, it was never like promoting. It was just like, oh, this is something we have a shared interest on. I think we might be friends. And then we weren't connecting for a while, and then we did. And it's just like, I still am in contact with all three of those people I mentioned. Both well, they're all three producers, but also one of them is an artist who is produced by one of the roommate of the person that came in. I'm trying to be a little more sensitive with their names because they're kind of bigger people.
Gotcha. Understood. Understood.
Yeah.
I was I had an idea of who you might be talking about. And I judging by that, I think I might be on the right track given what I know about your prior history, especially in your time in Seattle and stuff. So
yeah, I just don't want to like out them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, 100%.
I haven't got over any of this with them, so
100%. So yeah, again, a lot of information to kind of unpack there, and it's really neat to me that your recommendation leans so heavily on the concept of organic relationship building rather than, I mean, you know, everybody wants, you know, I shouldn't say everybody wants to be, but, you know, you see all the time, you know, SoundCloud rappers, right?
Mm-hmm.
People who are just dropping their SoundCloud everywhere. And it, I feel like, as somebody who hasn't even produced anything yet, but somebody who will eventually want my music to be heard by somebody so I can get some kind of, you know, idea of, is this good? Do people enjoy it? Is this bad? Maybe not even necessarily for myself and for my own validation, but just as curiosity, you know, I had an idea. Do other people even like this idea? Is this, am I even on the right track with something that, you know, maybe could be kind of fun? And
Yeah, totally.
some of that does go back to, you know, you have to decide, do you want to make music for other people or do you want to make music for you? But I think
Mm-hmm.
part of human nature is you obviously want things that you create to be liked. I
Yeah,
mean,
totally. Well, and it's also just like it's kind of what we were talking about earlier with the way that a person is influenced by their by art, but also art is influenced by the person that makes it. And you, it's not selfish to want people to share in your excitement for something you created. It's just not. Um, Everyone wants that, and I totally understand why people want, you know, like fame or want lots of people to understand it or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of more than anything when you're more than anything, it is just organic relationship building
mm-hmm,
because I have not collaborated with a single one of those people, but I've tried to multiple times. And the reality of the situation is my friend Dara, he, uh, I met him also at my job, and different person. I should clarify. But he was a music producer. We started talking about music production, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like dude, we should collab." And I kept telling him that every time we met up, I was like, "Yeah, dude, just let me know, like, let's collab." And then he was like, "Dude, listen, like, I want to be your friend. I don't necessarily want to collab with you." And I was like, I had this moment where I was like, whoa, like again, kind of those like preordained, pre-existing pathways. Like, just because someone also does the same thing as you doesn't mean you work together, but you can be like really fantastic friends and learn a lot from them just because like you do the same things. And like, you know, kind of towards my other friends who ended up getting me connected with a playlist curator, like we've wanted to work together, but it just hasn't worked out. And so like, but like independent of all that, I'm glad I just know all of these people individually because I like them all as people.
mm-hmm.
And so I think that's like the key thing is just like you get excited about people, you get excited about those connections, and what you'll end up working with, what you'll end up making is going to be um, even better if you are in the same way that your art is influenced by you. The people that influence you also influence your art. And when you have good people around you that are working with you on this path towards you making better and more interesting things, like you will just have a better time. I guess it kind of like it sucks that it's all like wrapped up in this like industry thing because the reality situation is like I wish we could all just like I don't know go make music, go share aux, go have a party, go like you know rage on some music. Not an actual party right now because COVID times, but
Right.
like yeah that's what it is. It's just like make art, be excited about it, and the more people that you do that with genuinely, and the more people, the less you expect of people, and the more you try to give towards other people, the happier you'll be with any result, be that playlist curating, be that collaboration, um, be that just getting feedback on a track. Like instead of, and I know you've sent me stuff for feedback, so I'm not like calling you out or anything, but
Right.
like instead of being like, yo, bro, can you give me some feedback on this? Like, not that you've done this again to me or that it's ever been a problem, but like, just be like, hey, like I'm really stuck on this song. I really value your input. Like, just like wording it out a little differently, like because then you tell your actual intentions with that. It's not just like hey like I need you to give me something. It's more like I am feeling it's you're allowing some vulnerability. You're going like I like this. I really value your opinion. I want to know like what you think of it. And then that just comes across as so much better of an interaction. And I think that's just you know that can be true for basically everything. It's just like if you want to do something and you want to do something better, just like the more you think about giving and the less you think about taking, the more you will get.
Yeah, definitely. You touched on they're almost polar opposites, but they're not, and they're really important topics that I think link together. And it's not just in the music industry, but it's in life. You mentioned, I've done a lot with business and stuff, and in business, a lot of times we talk about how your network is your net worth. The people that and the people that they know can oftentimes make or break you in the business world, and then that sounds to be true of the music world. But you also touched on the fact that while it's important to meet people, and sometimes the people that you meet can lead you to other amazing people who can help you in your career, it's also important to differentiate the fact that just because you met somebody does not mean that that person is supposed to be, that they're supposed to collab with you, that they owe you that connection, that's completely separate. And I think it goes back to those genuine intentions, right? You want to be a genuinely good person and foster a genuine relationship. And if something beautiful and amazing comes out of that, and a great connection happens, then fantastic. But you can't walk into an interaction just because you see value in someone, be it on a business level or a music level or a connection level. You can't walk into that interaction thinking, I know exactly, that this person has what I need, and that they're going to give it to me.
I think additionally with that, like a lot of people hear this advice of like, oh, you have to give more than you want. Like a lot of people are just like, okay, so like, how can I create value for this person? Because they have what I need. It's like, that's again, wrong way to go about it. Like, like it's the right concept. Like you're trying to give more than you get. But like, if you're just trying to like manufacture some value for someone else to like give you something in return, it's still transactional.
Absolutely.
It's not like, the opportunities that are afforded to you are going to be because you were genuine, not because you had something of equal value to give back. It's almost always not equal. Someone is almost always going to give you way more than they should have. They're going to invest in you way more than they should have. And it's like all the opportunities I have, I'm so thankful for, because I don't like deserve them. Like I was just being me and trying to be the best I could. And then someone like hooked me up with an interview, like hooked me up with like, like I guess even just and that friend that I was telling you about that hooked me up with that playlist curator. Like you didn't have to do that. I think at the time we hung out twice for like 3 hours. Like we weren't even really friends at that point. Like I liked them, and they liked me, but like they didn't owe me anything. They just saw something in me and were like, you know what? I think they deserve this, and then they just did it. And I wasn't expecting anything. And like I wasn't trying to manufacture something. Like I know you have connections. Like, is there anything I can do to like be your friend and you can like give me something? It's like no. It was just like I was in awe. I was really excited to meet this person, to just connect with them, and then it ended up being something. And it's almost always like it feels like they're giving you something, when in reality to that person it's just kind of like whatever. Like when people ask me about like production tips or whatever, they're like, oh my god, thank you so much, and I'm like, dude, this is like very self-indulgent. I like talking about it. Like it makes me feel good to talk about music production. So it's like I'm not giving you something that I didn't want. Like this is nothing to me. This is what I do for fun. This is great. So yeah, it's kind of just funny in that perspective.
Definitely a lot of good nuggets in there for sure. A lot of good pieces of information. I think it's so important to remember that even though as no matter who you are, even outside the context of music, be it as a music creator or a salesperson or whoever you are as a person, at the end of the day, you talked a lot about that manufacturing of value for this person, and you did the whole I got kind of a Count Olaf-y impression out of it. I know you have connections. You might not think that people can see through that, but they can see through that. If I called up my client that I happen to know has a budget of, I don't know, $1 million, let's say, and I know that, I have a product that falls into that budget, that'll, even if it only takes up half that budget, but I know there are dollars there that I can get into, I'm not going to manufacture value, even though I think that they have something to offer me, because that's not the case. If I think that my product is truly that good, be it music or, whatever it is that I have created, I will start with a genuine intention. And, hey, I genuinely think that you would like this. Hey, I would genuinely like to spend some more time with you, and hope that maybe a conversation happens around that. And if something works out, great. I wouldn't even necessarily say hope, because really you should be spending time with people who make you feel good and people that you make feel good. There should be a reciprocation of emotional fulfillment going on in every relationship. And if it's not there, first of all, it's a bad relationship. And second of all, you're not going to get out of it what you think you want.
And third of all, if you get out of it what you think you want, you'll realize that it wasn't what you thought you wanted, or wasn't what you wanted anyway. Like if you have a relationship that's like not very good, and you do it like you do everything that we've talked about correctly, and you're like not hoping, but it's just like not vibing, like you're not going to get something out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's really, again, it's like fluffy, but it's I wish I had a better way to explain like the micro interactions of like humanity, because the reality of the situation is that's what it is. Like we wouldn't be friends if not for the micro interactions that we had, like when we were in like freshman gym class. And it's just like what we ended up talking about, the way that we held ourselves, the way that we didn't really like expect anything from one another. Like we just ended up, and I don't know, I've asked you for all sorts of help on all sorts of like computer related things and stuff like that. And I'm sure that it didn't bother you at all. In fact, I'm sure you were pretty excited to talk about it.
I was going to say, kind of going back to that whole music production thing. At the time when I was owning my computer repair business, I was like, somebody wants to talk about computers? Yes, I'm not the nerd anymore. Like I was super stoked that somebody wanted to talk about it. So yeah, it's funny that you go back to that, because yeah, it's 100% true.
It's just natural.
And I didn't even really view it as me giving value. It seemed like an interaction that was just supposed to happen. You asked, hey, by the way, whenever you have some time, I'm having this weird issue. Could you help maybe, walk me through it or explain the intricacies that go on here? And I'm like, yeah, sure. That'd be awesome. I'd love to do that.
But also in the event that you would have been like, oh yeah, like, I'm sorry, but I'm not available right now. Or even if you would have just like cold, like cut me off or whatever, we probably still would have been friends for other reasons. And that would have been totally okay. And then we might've come back to it later and you had time, or like, I always think about like how difficult it is to get a hold of me. And it gets increasingly more difficult as I get increasingly frustrated with social media and nuke all of my accounts. But like, just because I'm not responding to you immediately doesn't mean I don't care about talking to you. It just means that like something came up, like, I'm sorry. And like, this isn't necessarily something that needs to be recorded on a podcast, but you get the idea. It's like, it all just comes back to like, you, in any sort of endeavor, musically or otherwise, your connections on a business level and a friend level should be getting muddled. Like you should be making friends with your connections, and your friends should be becoming connections as they progress, and you help them progress too. And that's just that, like, if that's not happening, then there's probably something hollow in your structure, and it might collapse on you. You know what I mean?
Wow. That was, I don't know if you intended for that to sound that profound, but that last little bit, something hollow in your structure and it might collapse, that is an interesting concept that I think stands true for really any relationship, friendship, business relationship, romantic relationship. I think it holds true pretty much everywhere. If something's not working, that there's probably something missing and something's hollow, and it's probably not going to work out in the long term.
Yeah. Either that, or it could be fixed 100% by communication. So it's kind of like one of those things, right? Where it's like, like you got to communicate, you got to be like natural about stuff. You got to like, just make sure that like you're being honest and earnest all the time, and like, it'll just work. This is facts.
Definitely.
Be you, don't be overbearing. Check.
Right.
So.
All right. I have one final question for you. I know it's probably getting close to dinner time and you've got other things to do with your busy life in LA. So I'm going to wrap this up, but,
right now I'm just hiding from the storm, but yes, continue.
So, we've talked about how our friendship extends the better part of 10 years, and more or less since I've known you is essentially how long you've been involved musically. And I know it extends a little bit further back than that, but for the context that I'm asking, if you could go back, and you can answer this, one of two ways, let's say either 5 years or 10 years, what's one thing that you would change? Like if present day Wilson could go back and tell freshman Wilson, be it, acoustic music making Wilson or electronic music producing Wilson, maybe one or two things, what would you go back and change, or what would you do?
I would say I'll do 10 because I don't think 5 is. I'll do 10. I'd go back 10 years and I would tell myself the most important thing for you to do is to educate yourself on the way that art is influenced by the world. Oh man, it's so much, so hard. I I'll say it this way. Understanding classism, racism, sexism, homophobia, those are all things that dramatically pushed my artwork forward and dramatically pushed the way that I go about making art and promoting art and with deciding who I want to work with and deciding who I want to like put my time into valuing and who is like worth my time. Those are all things that are I think are critical to um, to my music making process right now and my life in general. And I would say that to do my best to educate myself on all of those things, and then to um, do what I want because I want to do it musically. Like no, like don't think about how much money it's gonna make you. Just make the fucking stuff. And then finally, when I'm excited about something, reclaim that excitement that I had when I was an elementary schooler about how I used to just share music all the time. So I'll kind of recap. When I was really young, I was always flaunting that I was a musician, probably a little too aggressively. But when I got to high school, I realized that there were people that were better than me. And my response to that was to just be like I did not handle it well at all. I just like was like, okay, well, I guess I'm nothing. It's like, no, you're not nothing. You're not amazing, but you're not nothing. Learn and grow. So I wish that I would have, you know, oh, I guess, and the most critical thing is just be more open-minded. For example, like I love pop music now. Like I love pop music. And for the most part, I actually produce like electronic influenced pop music. And I was like, I was such a hater of so much really fantastic music in middle school and high school just because it wasn't like cool or wasn't like what I liked. And same thing with like DJing. Like I thought DJing was lame because like it wasn't like producing. Um, but like I had no idea like how difficult and interesting and culturally rich DJing was, and like how it created styles of music that basically influenced my knowledge of production. So yeah, if I could go back in time, I would basically say like get really into stuff, get really excited about stuff, and don't let a scripted path of how you're supposed to get to success limit you from artistic expression. Oh, and always uplift and support in any way possible femme people or assigned female at birth people who are you're like in proximity with. Encourage them to learn production and all the other things that are gate kept by cis white dudes. Same with BIPOC individuals and queer individuals. Um, yeah, because I think that something that I'm like weirdly lucky for is that I was cis straight white passing for basically my formative years in music production. And I think that I was afforded so many opportunities just because I was expected to be good at those things because of the society that I was in. And I wish that I had earlier recognized that place of privilege and amplified it to all of my queer friends and all of my BIPOC friends and all of my women friends, cis women friends, just and gender nonconforming people, because like the lack of representation that I see in those groups has radicalized me totally, to the point where I care so much less about fame now and so much more about like evening the playing field for music production. Um, yeah, so that's what I would tell myself. Um, to help everyone, but to sometimes there are people you don't really want to help, just because you're like, I don't know, they're being annoying or they're not like accepting your teachings very well or something like that. But like push that past that for people who have been gate kept basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely, uplifting the underrepresented majority or underrepresented minority. The folks who haven't had some of the same opportunities that
absolutely,
I guess you and I might have had.
Yeah, it would have been pretty difficult in Spokane, not gonna lie, because it's pretty homogeneous population.
I did not realize, completely unrelated to the podcast, but I did not realize, I was looking at some stats the other day, Spokane is 83% white as of the last census.
Yeah.
I did not realize. I mean, like going to high school where we went, I felt like it felt kind of equal. And again, that might be my privilege showing, but I went and actually looked at the stat and I was like, what the heck? Like I didn't, yeah. So definitely, I mean, even just that alone, like you might not realize that, the arena in which you're playing, figuratively or literally, is probably overwhelmingly underrepresented by a group of people. And, if you can help them get there, even just to be represented, regardless of the level of success that they achieve, just to be represented, I think is important. A level playing field for everybody is important. And absolutely. Who knows, at the end of the day, that might be a connection that ends up lifting you up as well. So
100%. Basically everyone I've ever helped has helped me out in return, and I didn't ask for it. And back to our previous conversation about just like not expecting and shit falls into your my mom always says, what you send out comes back to you. And I think that's a really fantastic way to end the podcast, if that's the last question you had, of course.
Absolutely, it was. Yeah, definitely. What you send out comes back to you. That is a fantastic way to end the podcast. Well, thank you everybody for listening. For those of you who are still with us, it's been a fantastic time interviewing Wilson. I'm going to be putting a link in the description to some of Wilson's music, and I'm sure that they would appreciate it if you went and stopped by. Wilson and I are probably going to have a discussion about some intro music here, so maybe Wilson has a little treat for me to throw us some intro music. So maybe listen to the intro music.
Oh yeah. I was like, what are we talking about? Yeah, totally.
So yeah, thank you everybody.
The walls are spinning in this room again. Look to the ceiling for advice. I'm no one here, I thought you were my friend. Pretend it's true so you can take mine.